Okay, well, apparently I am now live, so I have no idea if anyone is going to see this or whether this is something people actually want to see. But either way, this is your favorite, relatively eccentric person who explores the darker side of mind, body, spirit, and the forces of light in his own little eccentric way. Wanting to wish you a happy, whatever the heck it is, time of the year for you, whether it's Christmas, New Year, whatever the fuck, I mean, like, the wonderful thing about this whole, like, December, end of December time is that people have applied meanings to it, and there's a combination between different cultural stuff which goes on with it, and so on and so forth. And if, like, you're really intelligent, you stop giving a shit for that, let's be honest. This is a time of year when people just meet each other, say hello, give each other gifts. Hello out there. You are my current first viewer, and thank you for the thumbs up. I don't normally go live because I don't often have time to, but this is just like a short interval or interlude in my life when I've decided that it would just be great to say hello. The room I'm in at the moment is where I do all my work. So I've got my computer, my monitor, my microphone, keyboard, got the speakers there. Behind me, way at the back of this room, I've got the table where I do my photograph professional tarot reading. So that's got the tarot cloth on it with all the runes around it. And because it's it's a photograph for my theologically diverse client base, I've got a few things out there. I've got the crystal ball, I've got a wooden pentagram, and I've also got a nativity set for the time of year, a tiny little ceramic one, but the wise men would not stand up. So essentially, there's a few things missing from it. And even if it was a complete set, it would still be a theologically inappropriate one for any thing because it doesn't have all the right key players and they all look a bit sort of like nouveau modernly bullshit. So it's the kind of thing that I know they probably sell in some tourist trash stall in Bethlehem somewhere, and just because it cost me about £3 on AliExpress, it was just like a piece of like ceramic crap. But that's there. Then to the right of it, I've got another laptop with 3 frequency generators plus my radionic equipment. And I've also got a couple of other tarot packs which I've been using as well for meditation and contemplation and other fun things, as well as the 40 Servants deck, which actually came in useful with a bit of commercial work I had, which came up within the past few weeks. So that was actually quite a useful thing. Thanks, Tommy Kelly, for your artwork. I really like what you've done there, and I think it's like, really is cool. For those of you who haven't yet got like the 40 Servants deck and had a look at some of the artwork and the usability and little symbols and sigils for the things, it just it looks right. It looks usable. It's a useful, fun tool of meditation. It's a useful thing for other stuff. And I guess it's the wrong time to request a Ouija summoning of Satan. Well, that's a bad spelling of Santa, so we could try and think about something along those lines. And a Ouija board summoning of Satan. You do realize, of course, that in the spring of this year, there was someone high up in the Church of England who had a conversation with me, and I had to leave the Church of England. I ended up joining the Unitarian Church in the end, and that's something which I think most people involved in New Age spirituality should think about doing. Because it works with everyone and everything in every possible way. So that's something everyone should contemplate. But as far as should I actually, on the run up to the festive season, do something to help people to deal with some of the stress that they go through in Christmas, so that like when everyone else is away, and it's the end of the day, you've finished dealing with presents and dinner. Should there be a secret little YouTube video which you can watch on your phone in bed of me doing something dark and spooky and dubious just to, change the environment, change the mood a bit for your own therapeutic purposes? Possibly, I could actually do that. Why would I want to do something like that? Well, because I think it's actually therapeutically good to have a change of mood. Okay, you can have some really, really wonderful, good, hardworking, people in the world, very, very therapeutic, very in keeping with everything which is positive in life. But yet they want to explore dark fantasy imagery or dark horror movies and so on and so forth. And I think that there is a very real, important therapeutic component to these things, so long as we don't see them as being sources of wisdom and truth and light. So, some people might think that, oh my God, Nicky's so weird and he's so creepy. Well, in some respects, it's a way of letting go, isn't it? In some respects, it's a way of like trying to reach some kind of like a psychological equilibrium. What's the Unitarian Church? Well, it's just like every other single church in the world, but they have no religious creed at all. So they don't tell you what to believe. And if you believe something different to another person, then that gives an extra level of richness to the whole thing. So there are people in the Unitarian Church who are atheists, who are theists or Christian or Jews or Muslims or pagans or witches or Wiccans or agnostics or deists. But it's a question of like, if they have a religious creed, it's just like love and trying to find the common strain in everything which is out there. So it isn't a religious system. Okay, it's a question of using every possible source. I mean, there's plenty of information from the UUA, which is the Unitarian Universalist Association in America, which explains like 7 principles and 6 sources, which is pretty universal. It's got a fantastic history associated with it, which I think you should all be involved in. Merry Christmas, Happy Midwinter, Happy Krampus Mass for those of you who would rather call it that. This is the time of year when we engage with sparkly lights and tinsel and that kind of thing, and apply whatever meanings we damn well see fit to the thing. Okay, and it's important to apply every possible meaning you can to it, because it's just there. It's a product of cross-cultural things happening over time, which have like led to the world being the way it is. And that's a good thing, it's just, to still wish people Merry Christmas. It doesn't mean, I mean, is there anyone, I mean, this is the challenge, all right? This is the challenge. Think back over your entire history of your entire life. And have you ever heard anyone saying, Happy Christ Mass? No. It's the word Christmas, which sounds more like tinsel and pudding and roast dinner. It's Christmas. It's one word, okay, which doesn't really mean Christ Mass. We're not celebrating Christ Mass, are we? The Mass of Christ, and that is why we are gathered here today. No, there's not a single sodding person in your entire history who's ever said that, because it doesn't exist, apart from even within the Church of England and the Catholic Church and all that stuff. And then they still say Christmas, because they haven't stopped, they haven't like separated the two words and created a new meaning and explained stuff about why it's a bloody midwinter. Glory to my Lord Saturn. Yeah, whatever. Hello, Nick. Great to see and hear you. Yeah, I should try and fit live in much more, but sometimes work is just like really, really, really too damn hard and draining, and I literally don't have time to do more fucking video, which is pissing me off. But also it means I'm working and there's money coming in so I can actually afford to live. And what with the bills going up, the anticipated council tax increase, the anticipated electricity, I mean, the cost of gas is going to double in April, for crying out loud sake. Okay, it's already pretty damn pricey because it's already gone up. And now it's going to go up further in April. So, I have to be working. But do I really need to get more video work? Yes, I bloody well do. I've got to somehow find a way of fitting it all in, because it like seriously pisses me off. I haven't really had like the time and the energy to be able to get that done. But it's a question of like all the things I'm really, 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 really struggle with, like being organized. I'm okay at getting up in the morning and turning on a computer and sitting on my ass drinking coffee and then waiting for work to come in. I mean, I can do that. Just like getting everything else in my life sorted out and getting the house cleaned and tidied, and that's a real bastard too. Life stuff. Just because I'm a professional tarot reader, it doesn't mean to say I can do funny things with the magic wand and all of a sudden, bam, the house is clean and tidy and all the bills are paid and everything is wonderful. Now, I mean, all the stuff about, this thing called, this stuff we've been studying for years, this magic thing. It's essentially an extended version of attempting to use the power of prayer, really, isn't it? Trying to get that altered state of consciousness and transcendentalism and trying to put some extra luck of a certain particular type and character into a situation. That's what that really all is. But instead of it like being studied well, people go on and on and on about all the various traditions and the rituals and all the rest of that bollocks, and it's not useful. I mean, it contains interesting concepts. It's interesting concepts of the poetry and the art of it, which is what is really interesting, and the theology which goes into the history of it, which is really interesting. But that's kind of like from a folk mythological point of view. That's kind of like from those weird people who wear trilby hats and have long beards and go on about, folklore kind of stuff. It's not necessarily anything more advanced than that. So as far as like studying the psychology of it all, as far as studying like how these things could relate to different parts of the mind and applying the Freudian and Jungian stuff to the brain chemistry and brain wave changes which happens when involved in religious experience, and then how concentration and visualization could work together to create the opportunities for that. Okay, my favorite ever tarot deck happens to be the Night Sun Tarot. Now, if you get that and you think very hard about it, and how it's managed to create a depth of meaning, it really does blow your mind. I mean, it seriously does blow your mind, the way in which it is used. They are, because tarot is art. Okay, we can say that tarot is art because every single tarot pack has got pictures in it, and it's got numbers, it's got symbols, so it's art. Okay, tarot is art, but it's art within a certain context, a certain structure, a certain framework, upon which people have expanded over time. Okay, but the Night Sun Tarot takes it from the Judeo-Christian spiritualism as well as sort of like high magic art type spiritualism, and it blends that with sort of paganism and almost a feeling which I suppose overlaps with some of the feelings of almost Lovecraftian horror in some respects. Don't take that statement literally, but in some respects, it's got some of that kind of like macabre feeling to it. And there's this interesting use of color tone in the cards as well, making it look almost like it's printed on vellum. It's just got that kind of like sense of trying to create the atmosphere of something which is ancient and spiritual in something which is probably created using a combination of art techniques, including CG even. So it's got a flavor to it. So I never use that when working. Right? When working, I read using the Book of Thoth. It's sufficiently simple. It's sufficiently complicated. It's got great color symbolism. It's got great use of, great things which stimulates the mind. And it's about stimulating the mind with art and with colors and symbols and like a breadth of how the things go, which is how the therapeutic conversations of a tarot reading can actually work. All right, this is my job. This is what I do for a living. This is my profession. Okay, I know. I'm a heretic. I'm a blasphemer. Some would call me a witch and all kinds of stuff, but that's their problem. And also, I'm very strange and I'm very unusual. But being strange and unusual is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, at least I don't think it's a bad thing because I am strange and unusual. Honest, I am. But this thing has become a job. I saw an article even in the Guardian newspaper that came out online relatively recently that pointed to the fact that tarot reading has now become an important part of the self-care and psychotherapeutic ways of life that we live today. Okay, so people talk to counselors and psychotherapists, but they also talk to their readers and their psychics and their astrologers, because it's part of an extra dimension to the way in which we have to live right now. And these days, life has got so much pressure, and so there's so much like complexity to it because there's so much more information and different ideas, and people are pulled in so many different directions. People need to be grounded. Okay, so in order to be grounded, you need to have people to talk to about your key issues in life. And there's some things you discuss with your counselor, some with your doctor, and then others with your tarot reader. You okay? Yeah, I'm okay. See, this is the right here is a large part of why I'm going to try and get into trade next month. Yeah, I mean, this stuff actually does, it's an important industry. It's an important trade to be in. I mean, people think oh my God, he's just like a con artist or a this, that, and the other. No, this is a form of symbolic therapy, and it requires confirming with people, conferring with people, people using the conversation they have with me so that they can either agree or disagree and actually think for themselves. I mean, some of my customers don't, and they really need to just listen more and think more about what I say in order to try and like sort their lives out, because like that's why you have this type of conversation. I mean, why is it you go for a walk into the countryside? Okay, it's good for you to walk in the countryside. It's all the chemicals of the soil and the leaves and the chlorophyll, and they're good for antidepressant and that sort of stuff. But also, it takes you away from your life, so you can digest ideas, thoughts, and feelings. I look forward to New Year's reading if you do one in 2022. Yeah, I definitely really want to do a few video tarot readings for the year of 2022. I think that's going to be like a really, really good thing. Just for people, probably like when I did the one near Halloween with the occult tarot, which had the Lesser Key of Solomon's imagery on it. I mean, that was actually quite a deep contemplative thing, which actually related quite nicely to my life and actually gave me a few things to think about. But sometimes you as someone who's not the actual inquirer watches a tarot reading being done, and you personally pick up on, I mean, let's say all of that is all the stuff that's said, and there's this bit here, and there's that bit there, and they relate to some way in which you're going through life, or you're thinking, or your feelings. So you pick that up, and you take that away with you, and it does you some good. So that's one reason why tarot readings can be like good for people who are not the inquirer. Okay, it's like a lot of like symbols or ideas or conversations which you can have with yourself based upon what the other person is saying, if that makes any sense. Okay, so it's like when you watch a really, really good movie which has got some self-developmental messages in it. Okay, and there's a few things in there which relate to you or relate to the way in which you're thinking or helps you to sort out some of the tangles in your mind. Right? It has a similar effect, but it feels different, and therefore it can work on you in a different way. Okay, that's why watching other people's tarot readings are good. I just finished reading The Lesser Keys of Solomon last month. I'm reading a book of the Five Rings right now. Excellent. All right, I've got a couple of different printings of Lesser Key of Solomon, and some of them are interesting because they've got the number squares with some numbers which are different. Okay, so some of them have the number squares calculated the way in which they should, and some of them don't. So you've got to understand that every row and every column has to add up to the same number in accordance with the thinking which goes into that spirituality. Whether that's essential or not will always be up to debate and discussion. But there's all those people out there who say, no, that's really important because that's like the thing which brings the energy. And maybe there's some people say you just have the symbol on the table and then you chant something into it. And there's other people who say you've got to chant the numbers themselves and all sorts, because no one knows. The only thing we could say is that this is a complicated symbol which carries some kind of expression of opinion or expression of meaning. And then your own intention, coupled with the psychology of prayer, a combination between the shamanic frequencies and the gamma frequencies, maybe hypothetically, okay, helps to do something, either from a transmittive point of view or a receptive point of view, depending upon the state of mind you're in at the time. I mean, these things are hypothetical because they have to be. Because you know full well I'm the kind of person who doesn't like the phrase "it works" when talking about anything that's weird and unusual and spiritual and psychological and occultic. I think it's a bad use of language. Because otherwise, someone could come to me and say, "Hey, magic works," and I'll turn around and say, "Okay, well, cure me of my diseases by 9 o'clock in the morning." And then they'll say, "Well, it doesn't work like that." Meaning, of course, it doesn't work like that. Therefore, how does it work? You see where I'm coming from there? It's not worthwhile using bad language. It's good when one uses good language and therefore helps to create a better explanation. But come on, let's be honest. A lot of the people who are interested in all this stuff are rather confused, contorted characters, aren't they? a lot of people involved in the spiritualist movement or indeed the occult movement have got problems and need to start working on themselves. But you can still work on yourselves as well as keep your interest going, so long as you advance your understanding and intellectual processing of the same subject, which is basically what I've been saying on and off in various different ways, both subtle and less subtle, since I started doing this channel. Way back, in that ancient days when, there was only about 4 people on the internet, and I was just about one of them. And, there was like only about half a dozen big channels or some crazy shit like that. And the partner program was something you could only aspire to at some point in the future. Do you remember that? Do you remember those days? It was crazy. I mean, what was that, like about 15 years ago? 14 years ago, I think it was, when I got online properly and started making videos. Yeah, we've all, that's the whole point. We've all got problems and we all have to work on them. And a lot of the things that we've got within, like, the whole, like, mind, body, spirit world is there to assist. It's not the actual, it's not the cure. There aren't cures in the world. There are treatments. But, if you do things with, like, your, with your crystals, which do things, okay, and as well as with the essential oils, which do things, as well as with meditation, which do things, and talk to a counselor as well, in my opinion, you will probably get more growth than if you just talk to the counselor. But that doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't talk to the counselors. All right? And my point of view is that things like tarot is an ancillary thing on top of the counselor. So you go to the counselor, you definitely go to the counselor, you definitely go to the doctor, you do everything the counselor and the doctor says, and then you add your complementary therapies to it. You add your complementary way of life to it. And that's how an intelligent person would deal with this stuff, rather than just sticking with purely, spiritualism and magic and radionics and crystals and angels and fairies and all this stuff. You do all that stuff on top of getting everything done that you should. It's one of the best things. NED is one of the gods I work with. The time for his festival is soon. I'm glad. Do you know there's actually an atheist Christmas? It's the 23rd of December. It's called the Festival of Human Light. So if there's any atheists in my little audience of 8 people today, or indeed however many will watch this thing afterwards, then great. So have your, Festival of Human Light. So you got your pagan Christmas on the 21st of December, which is, of course, winter solstice and the Yuletide festival. You got the 23rd, which is the Festival of Human Light, and you got 25th, which is Christmas, which is in reality it's a commercial festival. It's a family festival. It's a community festival, really, isn't it? It's nothing to do with we must honor the birth of Christ. Bloody hell. No one in my life has ever said Christ Mass, ever. They've said Christmas. One word. Maybe a capital C, because it's the name of the festival. It's one word. And it means tinsel, and it means presents, and it means food, and it means music, and fun things on television. And it's all these things are, it's all this theological stuff is symbolic anyway, isn't it? It's the new year, it's a new cycle, it's the new birth. The whole word Noel just means birth. All right, so it's birth of the year, birth of yourself as you go through your own contemplative cycles in life. How exactly does a binding spell work to keep away a toxic person? Well, if you take a toxic person and you take some duct tape and an office chair and you that'll bind them up. I'm telling you that's. Seriously. How exactly does a binding spell work to keep away a toxic person? Good question. Okay, is there an answer? I'm not sure if there is. There are people who say this works, don't they? The only thing I could do is possibly give you a phrase from Alphonse Louis Constant, Eliphas Levi, who speaks about the purposes of his rituals, so he calls them, is to influence the imagination of the universe. And it was his belief that the imagination of the universe, so to speak, the astral light, the consciousness within the universe, would then have some kind of knock-on effects upon things in the physical. So all of the symbolism and ritual tools and accessories that people use is there to help to create a message to be communicated through meditation, through prayer, to the rest of the universe that you want things to happen in a certain way. And then that is then sent out. But one could only assume that on the basis that this is real. Now, spiritual healing energy has some kind of reality to it. I've felt it. Okay? I felt it doing something. So therefore, if you were to raise enough of it up and you were to be able to direct it and it had sufficient intention and meaning behind it, maybe it would change the probability of things happening in a certain way, hypothetically. That's essentially all we can say on the subject. All right? I'm not going to turn around to you and say with a starry-eyed gaze, it works, because if you do that, you're a fucking lunatic, in my opinion. Do I do lust magic? Why would I bother? I'm red hot and sexy enough anyway. I mean, no. What I would do, what I do in my life, is to do practices such as attempts at astral projection and often failing. I do attempts at contact with spirits and get some very interesting experiences, which are experiences. What I can do is I can say that this, that, and the other has created an experience. I don't know what it means. I know it's created in me the possibility of some belief in something which I don't fully understand, but seems to be indicative of the way in which the universe might work or might not. But it seems to be an indication to me personally that there is consciousness in the universe. There is consciousness outside of the physical. Human consciousness can somehow interact with it somehow. And meditation and concentration, visualization, willpower, and intention seems to be part of the process. And it's not something I would rely upon. I mean, if my bicycle broke down, what would I do? Would I take it to the bike repair shop, or would I light a yellow candle on a Tuesday afternoon at 3 p.m. in the afternoon and invoke the great god of spokes to repair it? I mean, think it through, for crying out loud's sake. What are your thoughts on initiation into Hermetics? So just play around. You don't have to be initiated into nothing. And all the people who carry on about you have to follow the tradition, this, that, and the other, these are people who try to psychologically control you, brainwash you, and they're cult leaders, and they're basically scum. Okay, so just ignore them. Do I work with Asteroth? What is Asteroth? It's a concept invented. Asteroth is a concept which is invented by people for the purposes of something at some point in ancient history. All right. What is Asteroth? People involved in Christian occultism are terrified of it because they think it's one of the infernal trinity. And there's others who are, because there's Asteroth and Beelzebub and one other one in the sort of like satanic interpretation of the Lesser Key of Solomon. And there's various different saints such as Bartholomew, which is there to control it, and Bartholomew is supposed to control Lucifer, I think. But that's just theology that people believe in. What does it mean that she controls the domain of Venus? Well, in the ancient world, people didn't actually know jack shit, did they? All right? And people tried to work things out based upon their own creative thoughts, and they made mistakes on the way. That's why one of the greatest herbal books of all time, written by Nicholas Culpeper, has some things in it which we now know is factually inaccurate. Okay? So if some of the greatest medical books of the ancient days that people relied upon and trusted, all right, have problems in it, then you could also assume that in spiritual texts there were problems with that too. So what does it mean when it says in the, let's say, the Lesser Key of Solomon, that Asteroth controls the domain of Venus? That means that some people believed at some point, and they believed it because they weren't very intelligent, that there's something wrong. There was some kind of connection between love or passion or something or other with this character of Asteroth or Astarte. It was basically a theological belief, a religious belief invented by a nutter for the purposes of trying to understand how the world works and making mistakes along the way. So don't worry about it. What are our thoughts on Carol Jung's idea of the shadow? Uh, so are you talking about shadow work there? Are you talking about the deep, in-depth human psychology of like the things inside you which you shouldn't touch, or is like dangerous, or is full of negative emotions? I mean, that's there. You know, we've all got things inside us which are beastly, and if our frontal lobes stopped working properly, then I'm sure all the animal instincts and animal energy would sort of like come to the surface. That's what forms of insanity are, isn't it? Some forms of insanity is driven by your basic animal urges, because humans are mammals. Okay, if you go back far enough in history, I'm actually related to my cat. Okay, because the cats took one line of the evolutionary phylogenetic tree of life, and I took another one. But there was a common ancestor at some point. Okay, so and if you are someone who studied neuroscience, even in a basic level like I did, you'll notice that the structure of the brain of the human and of the cat has similarities. And also the structure of a fish's brain and a human brain has some similarities, but different bits are bigger and different bits are smaller, and that's why they look different. I mean, the dogfish has got these incredibly massive dominant olfactory lobes on the sides of its brain. Okay, but it's still an olfactory lobe in roughly the same place an olfactory lobe would be in a brain, just like we have. So there is this, the common ancestor thing is there. So therefore, there must be lots of primitive stuff inside us, which is part of our shadow self, our negative self, our darkness, our primitiveness, our instincts. And if you were to like have, a massive full frontal lobotomy that gets rid of all the frontal lobes, then maybe the only thing that would be left would be the shadow. When all of your humanity, all of your memories, all of your thoughts, feelings, rationalizations, and ability to think and self-control is taken away. So if all that stuff is there, then is it worthwhile educating that? It's like having the concept of the inner child. There's part of your consciousness still wants to play with little toy trains, or still wants to do what little babies do all the time. It's there, it's inside you. And part of growing as a human being is to bring that into alignment with your well-adjusted adult life somehow. But it needs working on, and you need to find ways of connecting with it in your meditations. It's about meditation. It's not actually about playing with trains or whatever. I mean, some people do, some people don't. But if you can get into it through meditation, you can then educate and bring up this inner child inside you. So you start having more of your goals and your desires together. One person I met once said the human soul's like a chariot being driven by two horses. One is all the better aspirations, and one is all the darker, more instinctive stuff. But when both are going in the same direction, then you are a more efficient person. So essentially, trying to get your inner darkness, inner demon, inner shadow, or inner child in line with what is right for you makes you someone who moves in the right direction. Does that make sense? Okay, that's my interpretation. It's part of self-development. You're interested in astral projection. I'm sure you've heard of Robert Bruce and his tactile imaging energy work. Probably not. I haven't read up on absolutely everything which is out there. I kind of like stopped a lot of my academic endeavors as far as occultism a little earlier in life. I didn't really keep that up, so I don't know all of the current popular thinkers. But going back to the original artwork, Sylvan Muldoon and Hereward Carrington, the projection of the astral body, that is pretty much your Bible for the whole subject in terms of genuine astral exteriorization, in my opinion, based upon my experience. And I would strongly advise everyone who has not yet got a copy, you can get it for about £10 on Kindle. The projection of the astral body by Sylvan Muldoon and Hereward Carrington. Fantastic book. Oh, here's a fun one. Have you ever visited the planetary sphere of Venus whilst astral projecting? No, astral projection is about going for a walk in the physical world. Go for a walk in the physical world, go into someone else's garden, have a look at their garden gnomes, and then you go back to your bedroom. I have shared dreams with people using it, not necessarily deliberately. I have tried to put ideas into other people's minds doing it when I was younger, and didn't quite get the result which I wanted. But you can interact with other people somehow, other living people somehow that way. It's rather odd, and sharing dreams is something which does happen. So the idea of consciousness outside of the physical and consciousness coming from the physical to affect another person is very real. From what my little experience tells me, although there's always questions about it, I certainly wouldn't rely upon this as a method. All right. So, I mean, the idea of when people talk about astral projection to the sphere of Venus, that's more like the traditional idea of path working, isn't it? That's more like going into a deliberate fantasy spiritual world in which you're trying to connect with or use that dream world to get an understanding of something which is associated with a symbol or a concept. What the benefits are of that in terms of, your life path, I don't know. Some would say there is, and some would say there isn't. Okay. Yeah, the book I recommended by Carrington on astral projection. Yes, I would say that book, The Projection of the Astral Body, is the title. Okay, The Projection of the Astral Body. And the author is Sylvan Muldoon and Harewood Carrington. So Muldoon and Carrington. The Projection of the Astral Body. Damn well get it. Read the whole thing, study it, and live by it for a few years and see what the fuck happens. It is astounding. And that is pretty much the ultimate, that has to be, from experience, the ultimate text. Can I hire you to do an influence on a decision in terms of getting a job? Okay, right. A decision about getting a job, that involves sitting down and doing a SWOT analysis. Use pen and paper and think things through. It doesn't require occult techniques. It requires thinking things through and breaking down the argument so you can work out what's really important. What are your skills? What working environment is right for you? What kind of organizations can provide that? And are there any jobs going in those places? That requires thought. That doesn't require occultism. Okay. Most things that people try and adjust with occultism is something which you can actually adjust with regular normal life methods, and that's what I would recommend. Think things through and do things. Okay. What do I think about the idea that meditation originated in India? No. Humans have brains. Brains can be adjusted through concentration. Brains can be adjusted through thinking things through. Brains can be adjusted just through being ill. If you get a fever, you go into a meditative state of some type. But maybe in India, they just spent more time doing more things. Okay, the idea of the doppelganger is hypothetically possible, in my humble opinion. But again, that will be hard work to do. Now, unfortunately, I've got a meeting coming up, so I'm going to have to go on to it. But this stream has worked out quite nicely. So what I'd like to do is to do another one. For the moment, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, season's greetings, Happy Yuletide, Happy Festival of Human Light, Happy Midwinter, this, that, and the other. And I wish you all the best. Keep in touch, subscribe, rate, comment, favorite, share. If you haven't yet clicked the like button, do so now before I bugger off, okay? And I'll speak to you very soon, and I'll do something fun for you in the new year.